The world hummed with the vibrant, restless energy of the post-war era, a time when dreams were spun from the threads of ambition and the raw talent of a new generation. In the heart of this burgeoning cultural landscape emerged Arthur "Art" Miller, a young man whose soul was inextricably woven with the brassy, soulful cries of a trumpet. From the moment he first pressed his lips to the cool metal, a symphony ignited within him, a burning passion for the intricate melodies and improvisational magic of jazz. His beginnings were humble, marked by countless hours in dimly lit practice rooms, the metallic clang of his horn often the only sound piercing the quiet of the night. He wasn't just playing notes. He was breathing life into them, each crescendo and diminuendo a testament to his unwavering dedication. Art's unwavering devotion to music was fueled by a singular, towering figure, Frank Sinatra. To Art, Sinatra wasn't merely a singer. He was an icon, a titan whose voice commanded entire orchestras and captivated millions. Sinatra represented the pinnacle of musical artistry, a force of nature whose charisma and talent seemed almost supernatural. Art devoured every recording, every radio broadcast, meticulously studying the nuances of Sinatra's interpretations, dreaming of the day his own trumpet might intertwine with that legendary voice. He sacrificed sleep, social gatherings, and often even meals, his existence distilled to the pursuit of musical perfection. His calloused fingertips and aching lips were badges of honor, proof of the relentless grind he embraced to master his craft. Then, a whisper became a roar. An envelope, crisp and official, arrived, bearing the unmistakable insignia of Frank Sinatra's management. It was an invitation, not just to listen, but to participate, an audition for Sinatra's renowned orchestra. The paper felt impossibly heavy in Art's trembling hands, a portal to the future he had so fervently imagined. Elation warred with a sudden, suffocating wave of dread. This was it, the culmination of every sacrifice, every late night, every blistered lip. But with the dream's proximity came a terrifying realization, the immense weight of expectation. Could he truly stand among the legends, or was he merely a starry-eyed amateur, destined to falter? Self-doubt, a venomous serpent, began to coil around his heart, its cold scales pressing against his chest. Days before the audition, in the bustling hallways of a rehearsal studio, Art had a brief, unsettling encounter. Another trumpet player, older with eyes that held a cynical glint, bumped into him, spilling a few drops of coffee onto Art's worn sheet music. "Careful there, kid," the man drawled, a smirk playing on his lips. "Wouldn't want to mess up your big chance." The words, seemingly innocuous, carried a subtle sting, a hint of something darker, a veiled warning that left Art feeling inexplicably uneasy. The air around the man felt charged with an unspoken rivalry, a subtle current of jealousy that sent a shiver down Art's spine. The night before the audition was a torment. Sleep became a battlefield where his hopes and fears clashed. He tossed and turned, his mind replaying every difficult passage, every potential misstep. A recurring nightmare haunted him. Standing on a brightly lit stage, his trumpet raised, only for no sound to emerge, or worse, a hideous, discordant squeal that drew gasps of horror from an unseen audience. He woke in a cold sweat, the phantom sound still ringing in his ears. The stakes, he knew, were astronomically high. This wasn't just another audition for a local gig. The invitation had specified the performance was for a high-stakes, live broadcast, a national spectacle where perfection wasn't just desired, but demanded. The pressure was immense, a crushing weight that threatened to silence his trumpet before he even played a single note. The morning of the audition dawned with a relentless grey sky, mirroring the turmoil within Art. He arrived at the studio, a sprawling complex that hummed with a nervous energy, his trumpet case clutched like a lifeline. The sheer scale of the place was overwhelming, a labyrinth of corridors leading to a cavernous main hall where the orchestra was already gathering. The air thrummed with the low murmur of instruments warming up, a symphony of anticipation that both thrilled and terrified him. And there, amidst the controlled chaos, stood Frank Sinatra himself, a magnetic presence that seemed to pull all light and sound towards him. Sinatra was even more imposing in person, his gaze sharp, his posture radiating an almost regal authority. He moved with an effortless grace, exchanging brief, cordial words with various musicians. Art watched, mesmerized, a part of him wondering if this was real. When Sinatra's eyes briefly met his, Art felt a jolt, a sudden piercing awareness. He sensed an unspoken assessment, a quick scan that seemed to peel back layers, revealing the raw talent beneath, but perhaps also the trembling eagerness, the fragile hope that made him feel utterly transparent. Sinatra offered a curt nod, a gesture that was neither encouraging nor dismissive, simply observant. The first rehearsal began, and Art, despite his churning stomach, found a strange solace in the music. The conductor, a stern man with an encyclopedic knowledge of every score, raised his baton. The opening notes swelled, a rich tapestry of sound, and when it was Art's turn, his trumpet soared. For a few glorious moments the fear receded, replaced by the pure joy of making music. His notes were clear, precise, infused with the passion that had driven him for so long. He felt a fleeting sense of triumph, a momentary silencing of the nagging doubts that had plagued him for days. He even noticed the older trumpeter from the hallway, the one with the cynical glint, shoot him a quick, almost imperceptible glance, a flicker of something that looked suspiciously like envy. Then it happened. During a particularly intricate passage, a delicate run that required absolute precision, Art's breath faltered. His embouchure slipped a fraction of a second. The note wasn't entirely missed, but it was off, a subtle sourness that only a trained ear would catch. It was a microscopic imperfection, almost swallowed by the rich harmonies of the orchestra, yet to Art it screamed like a siren. He felt Sinatra's gaze swing towards him, sharp and immediate. There was no comment, no outward reaction beyond a slight narrowing of the eyes, but Art felt the disappointment like a physical blow. The perfect note, the one he had practiced countless times, was now tainted, a blemish on his otherwise flawless performance. Internal turmoil raged within him. The incident, small as it was, amplified every insecurity. He replayed the moment endlessly in his mind, dissecting the error, chastising himself with a ferocity that bordered on cruelty. The conductor, a man named Mr. Harrison, then addressed the orchestra, his voice resonating with an unyielding demand for excellence. "Remember, gentlemen," he stated, his gaze sweeping across the brass section. "Mr. Sinatra expects nothing less than perfection. Every note, every nuance must be flawless. Our reputation, and indeed a significant financial bonus, hinges on a performance utterly without fault." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. A financial bonus tied to perfection. The stakes, Art realized with a sickening lurch, had just escalated beyond anything he had imagined. His earlier mistake, now magnified by this revelation, felt like a catastrophic omen. The second rehearsal began, and with it, Art's anxiety blossomed into a full-blown internal storm. The conductor's words about perfection and the looming financial incentive echoed in his ears, transforming every breath, every valve press, into a monumental effort. He tried to overcompensate, pushing air through his trumpet with an almost desperate force, his fingers pressing the keys with a rigidity that stole the music's natural fluidity. This forced intensity, meant to ensure flawless delivery, ironically led to more erratic playing. His embouchure, usually so pliable and responsive, felt stiff, almost alien. The music, once a source of pure expression, now felt like a relentless adversary. Then, inevitably, it happened again. During a passage that mirrored the complexity of his previous stumble, Art's concentration fractured. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple, distracting him just enough. This time, the missed note wasn't a subtle imperfection. It was a blaring, unmistakable wrongness that sliced through the orchestra's rich harmony. A collective, almost imperceptible wince rippled through the musicians. Art felt a wave of heat wash over him, his cheeks burning with shame. He risked a glance toward Sinatra, who stood near the conductor. The legendary singer's expression was no longer merely observant. His jaw was set, and his eyes, though still holding an almost regal composure, conveyed a distinct displeasure. Sinatra's voice, when it came, was low but cut through the air with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "Miller," he stated, his tone devoid of warmth. "We need consistency. Talent is a given, but reliability is paramount. A single off-key note can unravel an entire performance, especially when it's under the lights." His words, while still measured, were a stark departure from his earlier silence. They were a direct challenge, a public acknowledgement of Art's faltering. Art felt the weight of every musician's gaze, their judgment a heavy cloak settling around him. His hands, gripping the trumpet, began to tremble almost imperceptibly. A sickening suspicion began to fester in Art's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that the older trumpeter, the one with the cynical eyes, was somehow involved. He recalled the man's subtle glance during the first rehearsal, the almost imperceptible smirk he'd caught a moment before his second mistake. Was it possible he was deliberately trying to distract him? A fleeting memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome from his childhood. He was 10 years old, performing a solo at a school concert, and his younger brother, jealous of the attention, had deliberately coughed loudly during his most important phrase. The memory, though trivial in comparison, reinforced a primal fear of external forces sabotaging his efforts. The thought ignited a spark of paranoia, making him acutely aware of every rustle, every shift in the room. The conductor, Mr. Harrison, then approached Art, his face a mask of severe disappointment. His voice, usually booming, was now a low, ominous growl. "Miller," he warned, his eyes narrowed to slits. "Mr. Sinatra's patience is not limitless. One more mistake, and I'll have no choice but to replace you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Do you understand? Don't squander it." The words were a hammer blow, crushing any lingering hope Art had of recovering gracefully. The threat of dismissal hung over him like a guillotine. That evening, Art retreated to his small, temporary apartment, the trumpet feeling like a lead weight in his hands. He practiced frantically, his fingers stiff, his lips chafed. Each note he managed to produce felt strained, forced. His hands shook, not just from exhaustion, but from a profound fear that had taken root deep within him. The trumpet, once an extension of his soul, now felt like an instrument of torture, a constant reminder of his inadequacy. He played the challenging passages over and over, each repetition a desperate plea for perfection. Yet his focus remained elusive, clouded by the conductor's warning and Sinatra's cold assessment. The sweet sound he once effortlessly created now eluded him, replaced by a hollow echo of his deepening despair. Unbeknownst to Art, the older trumpeter, whose name was Victor, harbored a deeper, more personal grudge. Victor had once been a promising musician, but his career had been derailed years ago by a critical error during a high-profile performance. A performance that Frank Sinatra himself had been instrumental in promoting. Sinatra, renowned for his exacting standards, had publicly, albeit indirectly, criticized the orchestra's lack of preparedness, a criticism that had unfairly fallen heavily on Victor, leading to a significant setback in his career. Victor had never forgiven Sinatra, and seeing Art, a fresh, eager talent, reminded him too much of his own lost potential and the man he blamed for it. He saw in Art not just a rival, but a pawn, a means to subtly undermine Sinatra's perfect world, a way to exact a quiet, insidious revenge. The stage was set, not just for a performance, but for a meticulously orchestrated downfall. The night of the live broadcast arrived with a palpable hum of electricity, a vibrant current of anticipation that coursed through the grand auditorium. Every seat was filled, a sea of eager faces, their collective excitement a heavy blanket in the air. Art stood backstage, the weight of the trumpet in his hand, a familiar yet unsettling presence. His internal monologue was a chaotic symphony of fear and desperate hope, a relentless battle against the demons of doubt that clawed at the edges of his focus. He tried to quiet the clamor in his mind, to find that serene center of concentration that had always been his sanctuary, but it remained elusive, a flickering candle in a hurricane. Just moments before he was due to go on, a shadow fell over him. It was Victor, the older trumpeter, his eyes glinting with a cold, almost predatory amusement. "Break a leg, kid," Victor drawled, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that barely reached Art's ears above the rising din of the orchestra tuning. "Though from what I've seen, you might just break more than that." The words, seemingly innocuous, carried a veiled threat, a chilling undercurrent that sent a shiver down Art's spine. Was it merely a psychological tactic, a manipulative comment designed to further rattle his already frayed nerves? Or was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Art's stomach churned, a knot of dread tightening with each passing second. He wanted to retort, to challenge the man, but his voice was caught in his throat, choked by a sudden intense wave of anxiety. Then, a voice cut through the tension, clear and resonant, demanding attention. Frank Sinatra himself, ever the charismatic leader, delivered a pre-show pep talk. His words were a masterful blend of encouragement and unspoken expectation, a delicate balance that both lifted and burdened Art. "Remember why we're here, gentlemen," Sinatra began, his gaze sweeping across the orchestra, lingering for a fraction of a second on Art. "We're here to make magic. Each note, each breath, a piece of that magic. Give it your all. Leave nothing in the wings." The message was clear. Perfection was not just desired, it was demanded. The pressure intensified, a physical weight pressing down on Art's chest, making it hard to breathe. The orchestra took the stage, a magnificent wave of musicians in their finest attire. The opening notes of the first piece filled the hall, a rich, harmonious tapestry of sound that momentarily transported Art. He found himself lost in the music, his fingers moving almost instinctively, the familiar rhythm a temporary balm to his agitated spirit. But then, as the piece progressed, his moment of truth approached, an inevitable crescendo leading to his trumpet solo. The spotlight, a blinding circle of white light, found him, isolating him from the ensemble, making him feel utterly exposed. His breath caught in his throat, his heart pounded a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. The notes, once so clear and vibrant in his mind, began to blur, a chaotic jumble of sound and fear. He raised the trumpet, his embouchure trembling slightly. He drew a deep breath, trying to channel all his focus, all his years of practice, into this one pivotal moment. The first few notes emerged, shaky but present. Then, as he reached for a particularly high, soaring passage, the sound wavered. His lip faltered, and with a sickening lurch, the third missed note erupted, loud and clear, a discordant shriek that pierced the otherwise flawless performance like a shard of broken glass. It hung in the air, a jarring, ugly sound that seemed to echo in the sudden, stunned silence that followed. The camera, sensitive to every nuance, momentarily panned to Sinatra. His expression was unreadable, almost frozen, a mask that offered no hint of his internal reaction. The world seemed to tilt on its axis for Art, his vision blurring with a hot, stinging shame. Unknown to Art, the reason for his sudden, inexplicable stumble was not entirely his own. Just before the performance, in a moment of calculated malice, Victor had subtly, almost imperceptibly, tampered with Art's instrument. A tiny, almost invisible alteration to a valve, enough to disrupt the delicate balance, to throw off the precise airflow, ensuring that in the critical moment, under the immense pressure, Art would falter. The stage was indeed set, and Victor's insidious plan had executed its first, devastating blow. The immediate aftermath of the third missed note was a cacophony of internal and external reactions. A collective gasp rippled through the audience, a wave of palpable tension washing over the grand hall. It was a sound that Art would forever associate with the crushing weight of public humiliation. Yet, through it all, the show, as they say, must go on. Sinatra, the consummate professional, continued the song, his powerful voice unwavering, a testament to his decades of stage presence. His eyes, however, occasionally darted towards Art, a fleeting, almost imperceptible glance that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. For Art, his world had indeed crashed down around him. The vibrant colors of the stage lights blurred into an oppressive haze, the music, once his solace, now a mocking symphony of his failure. Each subsequent note he attempted to play felt like a monumental effort, his limbs heavy, his mind a whirlwind of self-recrimination. He struggled to finish the performance, his trumpet barely producing a sound, a hollow echo of its former brilliance. The final chord of the piece, usually a moment of triumphant release, was for Art a descent into a suffocating abyss of shame. As the curtain fell, a strange silence descended upon the backstage area, quickly giving way to hushed whispers and sympathetic glances. Art avoided eye contact, his gaze fixed on the scuffed tips of his shoes, wishing the floor would simply swallow him whole. He knew what was coming. The dismissal, the end of his dream, a harsh, undeniable reality. A stagehand, his face etched with a mixture of pity and discomfort, approached Art. "Mr. Sinatra would like to see you in his dressing room, Mr. Miller." The words, though softly spoken, reverberated with an ominous finality. Art nodded, his throat too constricted to form a reply. Each step toward Sinatra's private sanctuary felt like a march to his own professional execution, the air thick with dread, a palpable weight that pressed down on his chest. He knocked softly on the heavy oak door. A gruff, "Come in," invited him into a room filled with the scent of cigars and old leather. Sinatra sat before a brightly lit mirror, a towel draped over his shoulders, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, silence reigned, broken only by the distant murmur of the departing audience. Art braced himself, his heart hammering against his ribs. Finally, Sinatra spoke, his voice low, almost a growl, but every word was a finely honed blade. "Art," he began, his eyes meeting Art's in the mirror. "That was a performance." The pause that followed was pregnant with meaning, each syllable hanging in the air, dissecting Art's catastrophic missteps with brutal honesty. "3 times, Art. 3 times you missed that note. A note that, frankly, a first-year student at Juilliard could hit blindfolded." His words were sharp, cutting, peeling back layers of Art's already fragile confidence. "You choked, plain and simple, on my stage, in front of millions." Art flinched, his head bowed, unable to meet the intensity of Sinatra's gaze. He was ready for the inevitable, the final pronouncement of his failure. But then, a subtle shift occurred in Sinatra's demeanor, a flicker of something beyond mere disappointment. "However," Sinatra continued, his voice still firm, but with an unexpected underlying current, What you didn't know, Art, is that I saw him. Victor. I saw him near your trumpet just before you went on. A quick, almost imperceptible movement. And I saw the look in his eyes when you went out there. Art's head snapped up, a jolt of disbelief coursing through him. Sinatra knew. He had witnessed the sabotage. A whirlwind of emotions, shock, anger, a sliver of hope, collided within him. The maestro, the legend, had seen through the deception. The world, which moments ago had been a suffocating prison of his own making, suddenly seemed to offer a crack of light, a possibility of understanding. Sinatra, seeing the shock register on Art's face, leaned back, a sigh escaping his lips. Yes, Art. I saw him. Victor. He's been a problem for years, a snake in the grass, always looking for an angle. The revelation hung in the air, a complex tapestry of betrayal and unexpected insight. Sinatra then pushed himself up, walking over to a small bar cart, pouring himself a drink. You think you're the first one to crumble under pressure, or to face a jealous rival? He asked, his voice softening, losing its earlier bite. I've seen it all, Art, and I've lived through worse. He turned, his eyes now holding a distant, almost melancholic gaze. There was a night, early in my career, long before the bright lights and the big bands. I was supposed to sing a new song, a ballad I truly believed in, at a small club. My big break, I thought. But my throat was raw. A nasty cold had taken hold. I pushed through, determined not to miss the opportunity. Halfway through the song, my voice cracked, a horrible public screech. The crowd laughed. They truly laughed at me. Art listened, mesmerized, a legend revealing a vulnerable, human moment. I ran off that stage, convinced my career was over before it even began, thought I'd never sing again. But someone, a wise old bartender, told me that night, Kid, the only true failure is giving up. That stuck with me. A sharp knock interrupted them. Sinatra opened the door to reveal a pale, sweating Victor, flanked by the conductor, whose face was a mask of furious disappointment. Victor, Sinatra's voice was now steel. Care to explain to Mr. Miller here why you felt the need to tamper with his instrument tonight? Or perhaps, to the conductor, why you thought such an act would go unnoticed? Victor stammered, his eyes darting wildly. Mr. Sinatra, I just wanted to show him he wasn't ready. He's too young, too green. He was going to ruin the performance anyway. His feeble excuses only highlighted his pathetic jealousy, his insecurity laid bare for all to see. The conductor, his face reddening with anger, stepped forward. Victor, your contract is terminated. Effective immediately. Get out. Sinatra watched Victor slink away, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. He then turned back to Art, who stood frozen, a mix of relief and lingering shame warring within him. As for you, Art, Sinatra said, his voice firm, but laced with an unexpected kindness. You didn't just choke. You were set up, but you also allowed it to get to you. That's something you need to learn to control. Art's eyes welled up, the sheer weight of the emotional roller coaster finally breaking him. Tears streamed down his face, a mixture of gratitude for Sinatra's understanding and residual humiliation over his own performance. He'd expected dismissal, not this complex empathy. Sinatra placed a hand on Art's shoulder, a gesture of profound reassurance. Talent, Art, you have in spades. But talent without resilience is a fragile thing. I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not after what I've seen. Not after what you've been through. He paused, his gaze intense. I'm offering you more than just a spot in this orchestra, Art. I'm offering you a chance to truly learn, to understand what it means to be an artist, to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. If you're willing, I'll personally mentor you. We'll turn those missed notes into perfect harmonies." The words were a lifeline, a beacon in the storm, promising not just a second chance, but a profound transformation. The unwavering support from Sinatra became the bedrock of Art's recovery. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, each one a step further from the crushing humiliation of that night. Sinatra, true to his word, took Art under his wing, not as a boss, but as a mentor, a guide through the labyrinthine world of music and self-discovery. Their sessions weren't just about trumpet technique, they were about mindset, about the unyielding spirit required to endure the spotlight's glare. Art learned to dissect his mistakes without self-flagellation, to channel his anxiety into focused energy, and to trust his own formidable talent. He practiced with a renewed purpose, the trumpet no longer a heavy burden, but an extension of his soul. His fingers danced over the valves with newfound precision, his breath control became impeccable, and the notes, once wavering, now soared with confident clarity. He spent hours listening to Sinatra's stories, absorbing lessons not found in any music conservatory, lessons about stage presence, audience connection, and the quiet dignity of a performer. Sinatra pushed him, challenged him, but always with an underlying current of belief that Art had never experienced before. One crisp autumn evening, months after the fateful broadcast, Art stood backstage, the familiar hum of a live orchestra filling the air. This time, there was no rival's malicious glance, no gnawing self-doubt. He gripped his trumpet, its cool brass a comforting weight in his hands. Tonight was a major concert, a charity event at a grand old theater, and Art was slated for a prominent solo. As he walked onto the stage, the lights blinding him momentarily, he felt a surge of exhilaration, not fear. He saw Sinatra in the wings, offering a subtle, encouraging nod. When his moment came, the trumpet raised. Art closed his eyes for a fleeting second, remembering the discordant note that had once defined him. Then, with a deep breath, he began to play. The notes flowed effortlessly, a rich, vibrant melody that filled the hall, each one perfectly pitched, each phrase imbued with emotion. There was a newfound maturity in his playing, a depth that transcended mere technical proficiency. The audience was captivated, their applause erupting into a thunderous ovation as the final note lingered in the air. He opened his eyes, a triumphant smile gracing his lips, the deafening cheers a stark contrast to the stunned silence of his past humiliation. Later, as the crowds dispersed, Art found Sinatra waiting for him. "You found your harmony, kid," Sinatra said, a rare, genuine smile creasing his face. "Not just in the music, but in yourself." Art nodded, a profound sense of peace settling over him. "I realized that night, Mr. Sinatra, that failure wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It taught me resilience. It taught me who my true mentors were, and who my true self needed to be." Their bond, forged in the crucible of adversity, was now an unbreakable thread in the tapestry of their lives. Art's career blossomed. He became a respected session musician, a sought-after soloist, his name synonymous with precision and soul. He never forgot the lessons learned, carrying with him the quiet strength gifted by a legend. He understood that true artistry wasn't about flawless execution every single time, but about the courage to stand up after falling, to learn, and to grow. The overarching theme of his life became one of redemption, not just his own, but a subtle echo of the wisdom Sinatra had imparted, a testament to overcoming one's own past struggles. Years later, Art, now a seasoned musician with silver at his temples, stood on a stage, his trumpet gleaming under the lights. He played a familiar melody, one that always brought a faint, knowing smile to his face. His eyes, though older, still held the spark of that young prodigy, now tempered by experience and wisdom. The music flowed, a testament to a journey of transformation, a harmonious future built on the foundation of a missed note and the unwavering belief of a man who saw not just a mistake, but a masterpiece.